Michael Jackson's home Neverland is a 3,000-acre ranch 3 hours north of Los Angeles. As with most of his life, it has to be seen to be believed. Inspired by the children's fairy tale Peter Pan about the little boy who never grew up, it's a multi-million-dollar man-made slice of make-believe.
Peter Pan is this magical boy. Pan is the god of everything, roughly speaking, right? And so it's not an accident that he has the name Pan. And he's the boy that won't grow up. And he's magical. Well, that's because children are magical. They can be anything. They're nothing but potential. And Peter Pan doesn't want to give that up. Why? Well, he's got some adults around him, but the main adult is Captain Hook. Well, who the hell wants to grow up to be Captain Hook?
This one is the full size from...
Fair, there's a zoo with giraffes, elephants, tigers, and a couple of orangutans. It's literally paradise for a 10-year-old child. But Michael Jackson is now 44. The inspiration for Neverland, Peter Pan. Why is Peter Pan a figure of such interest and inspiration to you?
Greek god Pan. So we see the baphomet. You have half goat, half man, right, on the baphomet. Now let's look at pictures of Greek god Pan. You have half goat, see the horns, and a man. You know, half goat, another picture. Half man. You see the lower region with the legs of a goat. You know, another picture. Half man, half goat. And one of the things that I don't know if you noticed here is that you see the Greek god Pan with a flute. You see him with a flute. And when you understand the connection between Peter Pan and the Greek god Pan was the god of the wild, the god of nature. And Peter Pan dwells in the wild. He is familiar with nature. He knows animals. He has relationships with animals. And considering Greek god Pan is half man, half animal. Another point, you see him with the flute. You see Greek god Pan with the flute. Also, Peter Pan has a flute. You know, these connections are not by chance. Greek god Pan is a companion of nymphs. Likewise, Peter Pan is a companion of nymphs. When we look at the cover of the book here, you'll see that Peter Pan is riding a goat. Why does it have to be a goat? Likewise, the Greek god Pan is half goat, half man. Considering these connections, when you talk about Disney, you talk about, you know, these fairy tales and fiction.
Because Peter Pan, to me, represents something that's very special in my heart. You know, he represents youth, childhood, never growing up, magic, flying, everything I think that children and wonderment and magic, what it's all about. And to me, I just have never, ever grown out of loving that or thinking that is very special.
Do you identify with him?
Totally.
You don't want to grow up?
No, I am Peter Pan.
No, you're not. You're Michael Jackson.
I'm Peter Pan in my heart. I'm getting a roller coaster next to go over there. And
You have a roller coaster? Do you have a water park?
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna build a water park on the other side of this mountain.
You got a water park?
No, we're going to. I'm gonna build it. So you can come in your swimsuit.
Michael, can we go on any ride, right?
Yeah, sure.
What the children wanted, they got, and everything was free. And for a day, Jackson got to be one of them.
Can I have one too?
She called it first and then you called it.
Oh, me.
Okay, here we go.
Sorry.
The problem was, I, like everyone, knew that 10 years ago, children were being invited to sleep over at Neverland. One of them, a 13-year-old boy, accused Jackson of sexual abuse, a claim that cost him millions of dollars. I'd assumed that now he'd be more cautious. But to my utter astonishment, I discovered that children were still sleeping over, sometimes in his house, sometimes in his bedroom.
What kind of evidence do you have that your brother did in fact sexually abuse these young boys?
I want you to know that there aren't really any evidence. The only thing that I know of, and my mother has actually shown me these things, she's the one that was outraged and brought them to me, that were checks that were written to the little boy's parents. And there are 2 checks that I know of that she has shown me, and it's for a substantial amount of money. And she was outraged over it.
How much money, and are you certain you know what these checks were for? Let's say that Michael...
I don't know what they were for, but I know they were written to the parents of the little boys that would sleep over.
You're just assuming then that it's hush money. Did your mother ever tell you that this money was being given to the alleged the parents of the alleged victims to keep them quiet?
That's why I can't say that it's hush money. Apparently, it was given for some reason. I don't know why, but I do know that she was outraged during that particular time. This is around 84, mind you, and she would say things like, "I can't stand this. He's nothing but a fag. I can't stand this." And I would say, "Mother, don't say that. Just because you see a check doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean anything."
But basically,
and that's the way she took it. Now to this day, she denies it because she has no support. In other words, if she were to go and tell the truth, Michael would drop everything and she would probably be out on the street. So she has to stand by in that way. But it
is thriller, this morbid thriller thing. And you see that it goes to a jukebox, right? And he's about to do his moonwalk. This is from part 1 of Moonwalker, the Michael Jackson movie. And what do you see on the jukebox, right? It's Pan. He's got 2, there's Pan playing a flute, right? We have pansexual. I've talked about Pan leading children away. If you understand this, that the grooming process for Michael Jackson started when these kids were all doing his little dances, right? Kids were doing his dances, singing his songs. He was grooming people, just like a rock star is grooming, girls or boys or whatever they're into when they start listening to their music. You're already being drawn in to be with them, right? Michael Jackson is becoming somebody that young people want to be with. So his music, his dance, all of this stuff was the first stage of the grooming process. You can see right there, he's got Pan. This was a choice that he made, for the Moonwalker, right? This is something that Michael Jackson put together, his team put together, and they chose to have him dance in the middle. And this whole moonwalk was a big part of his grooming process, right? When he became this megastar, when he performed Billie Jean, right, on the Grammys. And so that was his grooming. That was the beginning of his grooming process. And his obsession with Pan, Peter Pan, and then it's Pan the God. And it's, the Pied Piper that's playing the flute, leading Pan away, leading the kids away from their parents.
Music is still blaring and all the lights are going, this intensity. It was a wild sensation.
Then all of a sudden this huge black man came out of nowhere with a big top hat and took Wade out of Dennis's arms and told us to wait there and took him backstage.
Being the curtains being pulled back, right, of kind of just the whole world behind the scenes, his world. Michael came up to me and grabbed my hand and just sort of gave me a signal like, come on, like, let's do it. I kind of look out at this sea of people and then something clicked and I grabbed my hat, and threw it off and just started dancing. Like I was him, almost, for a moment. I mean, the center of his stage with his audience.
You do feel sorry for him. You honestly believe that this is a lonely man and that we can help make him happy. Us who are just nobodies. We couldn't believe that he would want to hang around us in this tiny little house. And he'd walk in the house, and he'd walk in the front door, and he'd go, "The safe chucks," like he was at home, full armed up, acting. "Oh, the safe chucks." That's how he felt about us. You go from a normal lifestyle, day after day, everything's the same, to this big star calling your house, wanting to come to your home and have dinner in your home, wanting to spend the night in your little house. He could be anywhere with anybody in the world, and Michael wanted to be with our family. This was all so overwhelming and like a fairy tale. And I got lost in it. And I know my husband got lost in it too.
And then I met 12-year-old Gavin and his brother and sister. Gavin met Jackson 2 years ago after he'd been told he was dying of cancer.
Your left, right, get on down, your left.
What is it, Gavin, about Michael that makes him connect so well with children? What is it?
Because he's really a child at heart. He acts just like a child. He knows how a child is. He knows how a child thinks. See, because I think that you don't necessarily have to be a child just because society says 18 and up, you're adult. That doesn't really matter. You're an adult when you want to be one.
But the only reason I'm speaking up is because I'm an abused victim, and I don't want to see anyone else hurt like that because I know what it feels like to be hurt.
But basically, I'm sorry, LaToya, I was going to say basically because of these checks shown to you by your mother and the fact that Michael, do you know for sure that he spent 30 nights with this alleged victim?
I have never, ever, Katie, seen Michael in the bed with another boy. Never. I have never seen him. I do know that he would have boys over all the time. One, of course, and they would stay in the room for days. Then they would come out, and then there would be another boy, and he would bring someone else, but never two at a time or anything like that. Let me ask you a question. What 35-year-old man do you know that sleeps with little boys and stays with them for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and sleep in the same bed? I'm asking you this question because this is a valid question. It's very open. Because most people would say, well, this is totally wrong. It's totally unfair.
Yeah, most people might...
And you know, what you have to remember is that Jordy, I do not know this kid. I have never met this kid. I know nothing about him. But at the same time, I feel bad for him, and no one's caring about Jordy. Jordy is in a very bad position. Even if it's not Michael, his parents have put him in a bad position. And there are a lot of Jordys out there.
Have you talked, LaToya, with your parents since making the statements last night in Tel Aviv?
I haven't spoken to my parents, no.
What's your reaction to what your folks had to say, LaToya?
My mother is very much aware of all the children that were there, all the boys that stayed there, and she is the one who always said that Michael, excuse my expression, but he's a faggot, and she would say, that damn faggot, I can't stand him. And that's what she would say all the time, and she knows it, and now she's denying it, and that's what hurts. But what hurts more than anything else is that if she knew that, then why didn't she say something about it or do something about it or get help because she felt that he was bothering little kids? I didn't understand the fact that he was bothering little kids. I didn't understand why the checks were written. She was the one who was trying to explain these things to me.
You claim
but
that...
now she's denying it and covering it up.
You claim that the reason your mom is siding with Michael is because your parents and the rest of your family are afraid that they'll be cut off financially from him.
He supports every last one of them.
You're just like fully in love at that time. When I wasn't with him, I was always thinking about him. It just feels like the greatest thing when he calls. He'd come over, we'd spend the day shopping and hang out, or he'd spend the night. Or I would go to the hideout in Westwood and spend a few nights there.
Normally the experience was you go into a toy store and it's like, you can get one thing, you know? And now this was like, grab a cart and fill it up.
Me and Mom slept in the living room. Wade slept in the room with Michael.
I don't remember any sort of comment about me staying with Michael and sleeping in his room.
When we were in Los Angeles, Chantal and I spent quite a bit of time alone. We went to Westwood, we walked down there and do things. Wade and Michael would stay in the room a lot, just playing, I presume playing games, and they did a lot of that sort of thing, watching cartoons. He was a big cartoon watcher.
Once the abuse started, within that first week, every night that I was with him, there was abuse, while my mother was, next door. He started talking about how much he loves me. What this is us, how we show our love for each other. The other people are ignorant and they're stupid. They'd never understand. If they ever found out what we were doing about this sexual stuff, that he and I'd be pulled apart, and that we'd never be able to see each other again, and that he and I would go to jail for the rest of our lives.
And that's what he was. He became a living version of Peter Pan the pedophile, where his music, his dance, his persona, his brand, his Neverland ranch, all these things were there as a part of a grooming process, where kids were running to him, right? All these types of, you hear all these fairy tale type of situations, Hansel and Gretel, all these, the Pinocchio thing I mentioned before, with the lost boys going to that island and eating candy and behaving badly and turning into jackasses. In this case, they were sexually offended. So everything that he does, his dance, his music, all these things were to get boys to sleep with boys.
See? Medicine don't know it all, do they?
According to Gavin, it was Michael's friendship and support that helped him beat the cancer. They've remained close friends ever since.
When you stay here, do you stay in the house? Does Michael let you enjoy the whole premises?
There was one night I stood in there, I asked him if I could stay in the bedroom. He let me stay in the bedroom, and I was like, Michael, you can sleep on the bed. And he was like, no, you sleep on the bed, sleep on the bed. We're like, no, you sleep on the bed. And then he finally said, okay, if you love me, you sleep on the bed. I was like, oh man. And so I finally slept on the bed. But it was fun that night.
I slept on the floor. I wasn't sleeping bag?
No, he packed the whole mess of blankets on the floor.
But Michael, you're a 44-year-old man now. What do you get out of this? What do you get out of this?
He's 4.
Yeah, I'm 4. I love, I think what they get from me, I get from them. I've said it many times, my greatest inspiration comes from kids. Every song I write, every dance I do, all the poetry I write, is all inspired from that level of innocence, that consciousness of purity. And children have that. I see God in the face of children. And I just love being around that all the time. Are you guys still staying up late? Sometimes I call your house so late.
Oh yeah, you're like,
but you tell me to call late.
We did, that was
when
one time.
People hear that children from other families have come and they've stayed in your house, they've stayed in your bedroom.
Well, very few.
But, some have. And they say, is that really appropriate for a man, a grown man, to be doing that? How do you respond to that?
I feel sorry for them because that's judging someone who wants to really help people. Why can't you share your bed? The most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone. You
really think that?
Yeah, of course.
You're taking the position that you use every single night that you go into. You sleep, and you're sharing it with another.
You said you can have my bed if you want. Sleep in it. I'll sleep on the floor. It's yours. I always give the best to the company, Like to him, I said, because he was going to sleep on the floor. I said, no, you sleep in the bed. I'll sleep on the floor.
But haven't you got a spare room or a spare house here where he could have stayed?
Yeah, but no, yes, we have guest units, but whenever kids come here, they always want to stay with me. They never want to stay in the guest, and I have never invited them in my room. They always just want to stay. They say, can I stay with you tonight? I go, if it's okay with your parents, yes, you can.
Were your parents happy that you were here with Michael?
Yeah, my mom was all very, very, very happy. And I know they're happy because I was happy.
Did they come with you?
Yeah, most of the time, but I wasn't really with my parents. I was mainly with Michael.
But they were happy that you were here?
Yeah.
This was his favorite thing to do. It was never on the table for Michael Jackson to stop sleeping with boys, right? You understand this? If you're a Michael Jackson fan, the first time he got accused, it should have been it. Michael, you can't sleep in the same, you can't have sleepovers anymore, Michael. It's going to be the end of your career. Isn't your career the most important thing? Yeah, well, you got to stop sleeping with boys. But he would say, no, that's the whole point. I don't care about the singing and dancing. His whole goal was to end up sleeping with boys. He continued to do it after accusation after accusation. He couldn't quit sleeping with boys. He couldn't quit having sleepovers, right? So there must have been something else there. He had a sexual addiction. He was a pet through and through. It was his most important thing. It's what he loved most. It was what his essence. And every time you're singing a Michael Jackson song, it's riddled with pet grooming energy, pulling you in, the Pied Piper. That was the Pied Piper music, his Pied Piper dancing. The kids were dancing and singing his music, and he was drawing them to the house, drawing the parents to the house so he could run his other grooming phases and end up separating the kids from their parents and sleeping alone with them and sexually abusing them. This is everything.
He supports them.
You know, your mother also...
And I must tell you this too, Katie. By the way, Michael and I lived at home from anywhere from 10 to 15 years alone without the other brothers because they married very early. They do not know the same Michael that I know. They don't know him whatsoever. And they never did. And when they would come over to the house, Michael would say, have them make an appointment. And I was the in-between guy, like a go-between. I would have to make excuses and say, well, he's busy, he's in his room. He'd run up to his room and say, I don't want to see them, I don't want to be bothered with them. And these are his own brothers. And I would have to make up excuses, and I go, Michael, but they're your brothers. I don't care, I'm busy.
Your mom also said that she thought your husband was a con man and a thug and accused him of beating and brainwashing you, and basically your folks say you're just out for publicity.
That's totally untrue. First of all, I don't need it. They also said I was doing it for the money. When you do a press conference, do you do that for the money? I think it's time to speak up and save innocent children.
Have you spoken?
No one has spoke up.
Go ahead, LaToya, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No one has really spoken out properly. No one has said anything about these children. And I think it's totally unfair. You have to ask yourself a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions to be answered and asked at the same time.
How many young children do you believe Michael...
Sorry?
How many young children do you believe Michael victimized?
I can't really answer that.
And have you had an opportunity to speak with your brother yet?
No, I have not. And I have tried, but I have not. I have put phone calls in, but nothing has been returned. Absolutely nothing.
Do you think he'll be coming back to the United States, LaToya?
The problem is my parents, especially my mother, more than so my father has no idea. My mother knows that I know a lot, and she's afraid of what I might say, as well as Michael, because they know that I know too much. And now I think it's time to put an end to all of this.
Do you think Michael will come back to the United States?
I have no idea.
All right. LaToya Jackson, thanks very much for talking with us. Perhaps you can come on and talk with us another time. Thank you, LaToya.
Sure.
When you're talking about children, we met Gavin. Mm-hmm. And it was a great privilege to meet Gavin because he's had a lot of suffering in his life.
Yeah.
When Gavin was there, he talked about the fact that he shares your bedroom.
Yes.
Can you understand why people would worry about that?
Because they're ignorant.
But is it really appropriate for a 44-year-old man to share a bedroom with a child who is not related to him at all?
That's a beautiful thing.
That's not a worrying thing?
Why should it be worrying? Who's the criminal? Who's Jack the Ripper in the room? This is a guy trying to help heal a child. I'm sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor. I gave him the bed because he has a brother named Star. So him and Star took the bed, and I'm on the floor in the sleeping bag.
Did you ever sleep in the bed with them?
No. But I have slept in the bed with many children. I sleep in the bed with all of them. When Macaulay Culkin were little, Kieran Culkin would sleep on this side, Macaulay Culkin's on this side, his sister's in there. We're all just jamming the bed. And we wake up like dawn and go in a hot air balloon. You know, we have the footage. I have all that footage.
But is that right, Michael?
It's very right. It's very loving. That's what the world needs now. More love, more.
The world needs a man who's 44 sleeping in a bed with children.
No, you're making it all wrong.
Well, tell me, help me.
Because what's wrong with sharing a love? You don't sleep with your kids or some other kid who needs love, who didn't have a good childhood?
No, I don't. I would never dream of sleeping. I would never dream.
Because you've never been where I've been, mentally.
What do you think people would say if I said, well, I've invited some of my daughter's friends round or my son's friends round and they're going to sleep in the bed with me tonight?
That's fine.
What do you think their parents would say?
If they're wacky, they would say you can't. But if you're a close family, like your family, you know them well, and
But Michael, I wouldn't like my children to sleep in anybody else's bed.
Well, I wouldn't mind if I knew the person well, and if I'm very close to Barry Gibb, Paris and Prince can stay with him anytime. My children sleep with other people all the time.
And you're happy with that?
I'm fine with it. They're honest. They're sweet people. They're not Jack the Ripper.
I suppose the problem for many people is what happened in 1993, or what didn't happen.
What didn't happen.
Just cast your mind back. What was that like when you first heard the allegations that were being made against you?
It was shocking, and I'm not allowed to talk about this by way of law. So,
But how did you feel about what was being said? I'm not asking you to talk about what was said.
I was shocked because God knows in my heart how much I adore children.
But isn't that precisely the problem, that when you actually invite children into your bed, you never know what's going to happen?
But when you say bed, you're thinking sexual. They make that sexual. It's not sexual. But we're going to sleep. I tuck them in. I put a little music on, and do a little storytelling. I read a book. It's very sweet. Put the fireplace on. We give them hot milk. You know, we have little cookies. It's very charming. Very sweet.
Sure.
It's what the whole world should do.
The reason that's been given for why you didn't go to jail was because you reached a financial settlement with the family.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to do a long, drawn-out thing on TV like OJ and all that stupid stuff. You know, it wouldn't look right. I just said, look, get this over with. I want to go on with my life. This is ridiculous. I've had enough. Go.